Hello and welcome to another Modern League video here on modernnexus.com. My name is Ryland, also known as Holy Shamgar on Twitch, and today we're going to be playing some Amulet Titan. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Amulet Titan, or at least haven't seen it in a while, it is a combo deck that's also kind of a ramp deck that is primarily focused around its namesake, Amulet of Vigor, as well as Primeval Titan. The deck's objective is to get a Primeval Titan in play as quickly as possible, typically aiming for something like turn 3. Turn 2 is possible, but unlikely. And you do that by abusing Amulet of Vigor and bounce lands, as well as ways to play extra lands, whether that be Sakura Tribe Scout, Explore, and Azusa. For those of you who hadn't seen the deck in a while, you will likely recognize Azusa, but perhaps not Sakura Tribe Scout. The deck used to play Summer Bloom and be referred to most of the time as Amulet Bloom until Summer Bloom got banned entirely, of course, because of this deck's success. So the deck kind of disappeared for a little bit, and then some very clever people found a way to start making it work again, largely off of the back of Sakura Tribe Scout, which was not an inclusion in the deck previously. So as I said, it's using bounce lands largely with Amulet. So when the bounce land enters tapped, it'll untap. You can float the mana and then bounce the bounce land itself or a different land depending on the situation. A lot of times you're looking to bounce the bounce land itself and continue replaying that same bounce land. For instance, if you have an Azusa and you can make 3 land drops. If you haven't made one already, you can play the bounce land, untap it, bounce it, do this 3 times and have 6 mana, of course conveniently for a Primeval Titan. One of the deck's other huge strengths is its ability to kind of chain Primeval Titans off of the back of Bounce Land, Taliaferro West, and Summoner's Pact. So when you cast a Titan or attack with a Titan, you can grab like Taliaferro West and a Bounce Land, and then transmute this Taliaferro West into a Summoner's Pact to get another Titan, which makes it a real force against any deck that's trying to control the game or remove your Titans or whatever. Typically removing your Titan isn't going to be good enough since you can continue to chain them. On top of that, there are a lot of utility lands. Things we're going to go for a lot include stuff like the Slayer Stronghold to haste the Titan. So often if you're not afraid of a path or anything like that, the turn you play Titan, if you have an Amulet, you'll often be looking for Slayer Stronghold plus Boros Garrison to haste it, give it vigilance, and get an attack right away. And then perhaps on that attack, grabbing Taliaferro West and a bounce land. Other utility lands include Cavern of Souls, which you'll maybe transmute for against control decks to try and make sure you're resolving your Titans. Ghost Quarter, which obviously comes up against certain decks in Modern. Colony Garden, making a plant and being able to bounce the Colony Garden and replay it is very, very good against aggressive decks. Similarly, Radiant Fountain, especially against Burn, of course. Replaying Radiant Fountain as many times as you can is certainly powerful in that matchup. We get additional bounce lands. Already mentioned Slayer Stronghold, Sunhome, a double striking land. Sometimes you'll be able to go for that as well on a turn where you maybe have activated Slayer Stronghold just to get in for all the damage you need to. Taliaferro West, of course, already talked about. And then Vesuva does a great job in this deck of copying relevant lands when maybe it would be difficult for you to get the correct colors otherwise or what have you. On top of that, there's a Pact of Negation that you can tutor for, since there's also kind of this Taliaferro West transmute package. Not only, of course, can you get all those utility lands, but you can also grab Summoner's Pact, Pact of Negation, Engineered Explosives, which is a big one, and Ballista. Those are tutorable off of that as well, which is convenient. And then the deck has kind of, you'll see some previous lists on Serum Visions. We are on Relics and Explorers. This helps quite a bit. Relics can help, obviously, against a lot of the kind of graveyard-relevant decks in Modern, especially stuff like Shadow, which is a big reason why we've added Relics. Shadow's become a little less popular online of late with the rise of blue-white, so we might not see that as much today, but Relics are still good in the deck, and you can obviously still cantrip with them. Explorers are great. They're mana neutral if you have an Amulet and a bounce land. They're actually mana positive if you have multiple Amulets and a bounce land. But in fairer games where you're just trying to ramp, things like Explorer, Sakura Tribe Scout, and Azusa can really just help you set up for Primeval Titan when you don't have an Amulet, and we'll even kind of side out Amulet in some matchups where we're trying to be a little slower. So those cards play a huge role. Ancient Stirrings obviously is great because it finds us Amulet, it finds us bounce lands if we need them, it finds us Taliaferro West. I mean, it lets us look at all our lands as well as, you know, hitting something like Relic, something like Amulet, Engineered Explosives, Ballista. What else here? So I did not... Oh, I also forgot to mention these Groves. So Grove is kind of a recent addition to the deck as well. It's sort of a hedge against the Shadow decks as well as just being a always untapped land that taps for green. So while it helps against those Shadow matchups, it's kind of just a free roll. There's really no reason not to include it unless you're concerned about having more blue sources, since a previous inclusion would likely be something like Botanical Sanctum. But yeah, you want to make sure you have enough untapped green sources on one to cast things like Secure Tribe Scat, and we're actually pretty low on untapped green sources on one, but it's tough obviously to include it when you need to include all of the other tapped lands as well. As far as the sideboard is concerned, we got a couple Swan Songs for some of the unfair matchups. We've got Dismembers for any time we need to be dealing with creatures, especially against things like Taxes. Leonin Arbiter, even Mind Sensor, these cards are huge beatings for us, so if our opponents have been playing any, obviously Leonin Arbiter a little more common than Mind Sensor, although I've seen both of late online. We need to be able to deal with those. Kozilek's Return and Fire Spout is kind of our ways to clean up. Kozilek's Return obviously being particularly good against Affinity. Hornet Queen for any of those matchups where we want to go wide and be able to block a lot of things. Again, Affinity is a particularly good spot for Hornet Queen. Thragtusk, any matchup we need to increase our threat density and maybe be able to gain a little life. Chameleon Colossus, also sort of a recent addition to the deck, again, due to the rise of Shadow. It's particularly good against Graceless Shadow, very hard for them to deal with, obviously, and blocks all of their things pretty safely, since all of their creatures are black, except for Snapcaster, of course. Tireless Trackers for those grindy matchups where we need higher threat density. You'll see us siding in like Tracker, Thragtusk Queen, or something like that against decks where maybe we're siding out Amulet. We want to slow down a little bit, stuff like that. Explosives obviously comes in a lot of different matchups. Rex Sage, Nature's Claim, kind of our Blood Moon package. Obviously they're good elsewhere like Affinity, things like that, but being able to Summoner's Pact for Rex Sage is a common line, as long as you of course have the 1/4 and know that your Rex Sage is going to resolve, all that good stuff to blow up the Blood Moon. If you don't know your Rex Sage is going to resolve, you might not be able to go for something like that, since of course you'll have to pay for the pack the following turn. If you don't have both of your basic forests, you wouldn't be able to do that, but obviously you get the idea. And then one more utility land in the sideboard here, Bojuka Bog, for dealing with those graveyards. Sometimes you'll find this in the main. You'll see lists fluctuating between 27 and 28 lands. This is what we happen to be on today. 4 Explorers is a pretty high number as well. I've been testing that lately since there's a lot of matchups where I want to side out Amulets, so I kind of like having access to a lot of Explorers, but obviously I'm not certain that 4 is what I like, but it's what we've been on this past week, and I've enjoyed it so far. So enough of that, I guess. Let's go ahead and get to those matches, and I'll see you in round number 1.